Alright, so that took a little bit of prying. I managed to get the lower bolt in, so that's in place. And now that we have that, again, all I did was go into a hole there in the lower control arm, pried down, at the same time kind of pushing in. A little tricky to get the alignment on this one, but once you have the bottom one in, you can use that like a pivot. And then all I have to do is push in on the top of that knuckle, and that bolt should line up pretty good. And you have to give it a little wiggle, and that'll get that one in. Then we can get those nuts on and torque those down to the correct spec. That'll be the last thing I do. I just go through, I get everything lined up, leave it a little loose so we got some wiggle room, and then we'll finish it up by going around and torquing everything down to the correct spec. Okay, so that's in. Lower ball joint. At the nut, the bolt, there's two studs in place, the nuts are on those. So now we can go about putting the rest of the components on. Gotta love that old school drop light, but I found it was the best one for trying to film. This one, the tie rods have been done recently on the car. I actually did a rack on this car. Not that very long ago, probably 5 or 6 months back. So I know those are in good condition, but you do want to check and make sure there's no play in and out. Normally you should be able to rotate, of course, for the steering. You shouldn't have any play in that part. And that one's going to get a castle nut. See if I can find where that went off to. And those are the type, of course, that you use with a cotter pin to hold everything into place. So let me locate that castle nut. It seems to have taken a walk somewhere, and I'll get right back to you. Alright, so I found that castle nut, or castellated nut as it's really called. It kind of looks like the top of a castle. And you got a hole in the tie rod. You'll see them on ball joints as well. That allows you to put a cotter pin in. It prevents that from ever backing off and coming loose while you're going down the road. So that castellated nut goes on to that tie rod end. And we will tighten that up and get that cotter pin in place. More so I don't forget, more than anything. So the trick here, you want to get it good and tight, and you want alignment of that hole with the cotter pin. I'm going to go a little further, it appears. The one thing you never want to do is loosen the nut to gain alignment. You don't want any play in this joint, so we really want to find the first sweet spot where it lines up where that hole will allow the cotter pin to go through, but we're not loose. So let's see here. Looks like I gotta go just a hair more on that. It can be a little tricky. You may have to sometimes go to the next slot to get that good combination of tight and alignment. But again, you would never back off or loosen it. You don't want to leave that loose connection. So that's in there good. Give your cotter nut a spread, whatever method you use. I can flatten it back over and leave that end out. So guys will bend both ends. I don't think it really matters much as long as it's in place. We got a good, safe, secure connection. Alright, so I'm going to torque up these lower strut bolts and the ball joint bolts. So I'll be back right after I get that done. Make sure they're good on the strut. The connection to the knuckle, of course, that's critical. We don't want any problems there. Using my old beam type torque wrench. Not the fanciest, but he's gotten a lot of things torqued up for me. Okay, next up is going to be the wheel speed sensor. Clean that off. These are magnetic pulse type sensors, so they will get debris, particles from the rotor, other small pieces of metal get stuck to it. I've seen a lot of times in winter time where you get a lot of road salt up in there too. All that can distort the reading. So you see that one is magnetic. Quick way to check those sometimes is to see if it's lost its magnetic property. They will do that from shock. I always have a habit, I put a little dielectric grease right around the area where it seals. I don't know, I think it kind of helps to keep some stuff out of there. Some manufacturers will tell you to put a light coating right on the tip. I know Ford's a big fan of that. So we'll get that lined up. Now, as I recall taking this one apart, the head on this bolt was pretty rusty. But we should be okay to reuse it. I just want to snug that bad boy down. And it's a plastic component, so it doesn't have to be super tight. As long as we can get it on there. That head's a little rounded. I'm just going to snug it up with my pliers here. That seems good. And they'll always have a little play on them. It's got a bit of a gap there, so I'm just going to fill that void with grease as well. And hopefully that will help keep any contaminants out of there. Alright, so the next piece going on is going to be the backing plate for the rotor. You do want to be careful with these. It's really common when you're doing some type of a wheel service that these will get bent or distorted. And the next thing you know, you got a customer complain of a grinding noise where the backing plate's rubbing on the rotor. So we do want to take care not to bend that as much as possible. These are typically a full circle, but I just took a pair of cutters and cut the front part of the ring off so I can easily slide it in and out and remove it without having to take the knuckle off. Alright, so that should be 4 little bolts. Doesn't hurt to put a little lube on these in case you ever got to come back in there. A lot of guys like the anti-seize for that. I'll leave that up to you what you like to use. And we should have 4 of those in place. There's one up there. Yep. Didn't quite get him started right. really common with these backing plates. They may need to be replaced. They get rusted and rotted, but this car's had quite a bit of work done on it. Those were replaced recently, so they're still in pretty good shape. Now, if my eyes don't deceive me, that's a 10 mil. They might be smaller, I don't know. Looks like 10 mil is working good. So just go around and snug these up good. You want to be real careful with these. I don't know that there's a torque specification, but you really want to try to avoid breaking these off. It can be really difficult to try to use an easy out or anything, because as you can see, the hub's going to be right in the way. So you want them tight. You don't want to overdo it and cause that bolt to break off. That could cause a real problem. So I like to do those by hand, and snug is really the way that we want to go here. And these do have a nice little lock washer on them, so once we're snugged up on that, we should be fine. These also have a Torx head in them, but kind of difficult to use that feature with this hub right in the place. Some hubs will have a access hole through them where you can get an extension through, but unfortunately here on the Camry we don't have that luxury. So a little bit of handwork. Next item, once we get this backing plate tightened up, we want to get the frame and our caliper assembly mounted up to the rotor. So we got the backing plate in place. I always like to make sure this flange here is as clean as I can get it. This old flange you're using, you really want to clean that up. Make sure you don't have any rust or build up on there that could cause it to develop a wobble, or what we call radial runout. The last thing we're going to do once we get this all down and together is to torque up this spindle nut for the CV shaft. But for now I'm just going to snug it in place. Backing plate's good. It's a little clip that lines up with a couple holes here on the strut mount. I want to make sure that that wheel speed sensor wire is nice, doesn't have any play. And it's in the correct alignment. Okay, so next I'm going to put up the rotor assembly. So it's been sitting around on the floor, so I got to clean it up good. And we'll give that a good spray with blade cleaner once you get it up in place. Just to make sure that that's nice and clean. So flip it over. I want to wipe out this inner part of the flange here on the rotor. Again, make sure there's no rust or any debris in between it and this flange surface. And this is an area where I like to put a little bit of anti-seize in place.